Do you remember when Hollywood took itself so seriously that every disaster movie was designed to terrify audiences, keep them on edge, and leave them in tears? Then suddenly, one film came along and ruined all of that in the most wonderful way possible. A plane is in danger. A pilot is haunted by his past. Passengers are panicking. And a non-stop parade of absurd situations unfolds that no one would believe could exist in the same movie. Yet that is exactly what Airplane delivered. Released in 1980 by Paramount Pictures, Airplane was more than just a comedy. It was a revolution that completely changed the way Hollywood viewed parody films. Starring Robert Hayes, Julie Haggerty, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, Peter Graves, and Leslie Nielsen, the movie transformed actors best known for serious dramatic roles into accidental comedy legends. But what made Airplane a true classic was not just its unforgettable one-liners or its wildly outrageous satire. Behind the scenes were countless strange stories, bold creative decisions, and fascinating secrets that most viewers have never heard before. Today, we're counting down 12 bizarre facts you probably never knew about Airplane. And don't leave too early, because the fact at number 1 nearly prevented Airplane from ever becoming the legendary film we know today. If you love behind-the-scenes stories and little-known Hollywood secrets, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now sit back, fasten your seatbelt, and prepare for a flight full of surprises as we take off with Airplane. Number 12. A forgotten VCR recording changed comedy history. One of the funniest movies of all time exists because someone forgot to turn off a VCR. That's not a joke. It's actually how the story began. In the late 1970s, Jim Abrahams and brothers Jerry Zucker and David Zucker had a rather unusual hobby. They would leave a VCR running all night, recording whatever happened to appear on television after midnight. They called it fishing. Nobody knew what they might catch. It could be an old commercial, a strange B-movie, or a television program that almost nobody watched. Then one night, they caught something special. It was a 1957 film called 0 Hour. The movie followed a former fighter pilot haunted by his past who is forced to take control of a commercial airliner after the crew and passengers become sick from food poisoning. It sounds incredibly dramatic, but to these three filmmakers, it was strangely hilarious. Everything in 0 Hour was played completely straight. The tragic dialogue was delivered with stone-faced seriousness. Every dramatic moment was treated as though the fate of humanity depended on it. The more they watched, the harder they laughed. Then a bold idea struck them. Instead of mocking the movie from the outside like most parodies did, why not take the entire structure of 0 Hour and simply insert jokes into every scene? They kept almost everything. A troubled hero haunted by psychological scars, an airliner in crisis. Even the lead character's name, Ted Stryker, became Ted Stryker. The food poisoning disaster evolved into Airplane, its famous bad fish storyline. Many of the overly emotional conversations, including lines describing someone as being listless, like a wet sponge, were heavily inspired by the dialogue in 0 Hour.
Sluggish, like a wet sponge.
Sluggish, like a wet sponge.
There was only one difference. Every serious situation was pushed to complete absurdity. The result was Airplane. When people watch the two films back-to-back today, many are shocked by how similar they are. In fact, Airplane wasn't merely inspired by 0 Hour. It was almost a remake, disguised as a comedy. And that created a major problem. Copyright lawsuits could have shut the project down before it ever reached theaters. But once again, luck was on their side. The three filmmakers purchased the remake rights to 0 Hour for just $2,500, an almost unbelievable amount. Airplane would later earn more than $171 million worldwide and become one of the most influential comedy films in cinema history. Looking back, it may have been the greatest investment Hollywood has ever seen. And it all started because someone forgot to turn off a VCR. Number 11. The Master of Mischief. For the first 3 decades of his career, Leslie Nielsen was the last person anyone expected to become a comedy icon. He specialized in serious roles: pilots, police officers, ship captains, men who spoke with authority, and rarely, if ever, cracked a joke. Then, he discovered a fart machine. And his life took a very different turn. No one seems to know exactly where the device came from. Some say it was made by a craftsman in Oklahoma. Others claim it was a gift brought to the set by a friend. But eventually, its origins stopped mattering. Because once it landed in Leslie Nielsen's hands, it became a weapon. During the filming of Airplane, Nielsen developed a very unusual hobby. He would stand among the cast and crew, carrying on a completely normal conversation, and then suddenly press the device hidden in his pocket. A very recognizable sound would fill the room. Then he would do absolutely nothing. He wouldn't laugh. He wouldn't explain. He wouldn't even acknowledge that anything had happened. Instead, he would continue the conversation as if nothing were out of the ordinary. That was what drove everyone crazy. Actors bit their lips, trying not to laugh. Crew members turned away to hide their reactions. Some even had to leave the set just to regain their composure. Robert Hayes later joked that Nielsen operated the device with the precision of a symphony conductor leading an orchestra. Soon, the prank began to spread. Nielsen even sold similar devices to members of the cast and crew for $7 each. Before long, the bizarre sound effect could be heard all over the set. Eventually, the assistant director was forced to ban them, but you can't really stop Leslie Nielsen from being Leslie Nielsen. He carried the device everywhere. Interviews, elegant parties, television appearances, elevators. There are even stories claiming he used it aboard first-class flights, and during extremely formal events, the formula was always the same. A perfectly serious face, an innocent expression, no apology, no explanation. Complete commitment to the joke.
Although I will do almost anything I can for a laugh.
Perhaps the funniest part of all is that after spending more than 30 years trying to be recognized as a serious actor, Leslie Nielsen became a legend because of a fart machine, and apparently he never regretted it. Because on his gravestone, he left behind 4 simple words. Let her rip. In other words, just let it out. Number 10. A movie engineered for nonstop jokes. Most comedy films tell a joke, wait for the audience to laugh, and then move on to the next one. Airplane doesn't work that way. The movie charges forward at a completely insane pace. Film analysts have estimated that within its 8-minute runtime, Airplane contains roughly 260 jokes. That means audiences encounter a new gag about every 20 seconds. And sometimes 3 or 4 jokes are happening at exactly the same time. This wasn't accidental, it was carefully engineered. The Zaz team, Jim Abrahams, Jerry Zucker, and David Zucker, believed that if audiences were laughing often enough, they wouldn't have time to ask questions like, why is the pilot acting so strangely? Why is everything on this airplane completely ridiculous? Their secret was layering multiple jokes into the same scene. In the foreground, a character might be delivering a serious line of dialogue, but in the background, someone is doing something completely absurd. A strange sign might be hanging on the wall. Outside a window, another ridiculous visual gag may be unfolding. You finish laughing at one joke only to realize you've already missed 2 others. That's one reason so many people watch Airplane a second time and are surprised to discover they never really saw the entire movie the first time around. Every rewatch feels like uncovering another hidden layer. But perhaps the movie's cleverest joke is one that most viewers never notice at all. Whenever the airplane appears on screen, you see a modern jetliner from the late 1970s. Everything looks perfectly normal.
You see us now? You should be able to see the field now.
But listen carefully. The sound you're hearing is not a jet engine. It's the sound of an old-fashioned propeller aircraft. That audio was borrowed from Zero Hour, the 1957 film that inspired Airplane. It's almost like a secret message hidden by the filmmakers in every aerial scene. Your eyes are looking at a modern jet, but your ears are hearing the 1950s. Most audiences never notice the contradiction. Our brains automatically accept it because the picture and the sound seem to belong together until someone points it out. And once you hear it, you can never unhear it. That's Airplane, a movie that doesn't simply tell jokes. It hides them everywhere and keeps inviting you back to discover more. Number 9. A Broadway legend appeared where no one expected. In Airplane, There's a moment that leaves many first-time viewers wondering if they just imagined what they saw. Ted Stryker walks through a military treatment ward. A doctor points to a soldier lying in a hospital bed and explains that the man believes he is Ethel Merman, the legendary queen of Broadway. At first, it seems like just another absurd line in a movie filled with bizarre jokes. Then the impossible happens. The soldier suddenly sits upright, opens his mouth, and launches into a Broadway show tune with a voice so powerful it practically shakes the room. Because it isn't an actor pretending to be Ethel Merman. It is Ethel Merman herself, one of the most famous voices in Broadway history, a performer once known for filling an entire theater with her voice long before modern microphones existed. Dressed in a soldier's uniform, lying in a hospital bed, she belts out "Everything's Coming Up Roses" with complete conviction, as if she were standing on the biggest stage in New York City. And that absolute seriousness is exactly what makes the scene so funny. Nobody in the scene is trying to be funny. Everyone performs as though this is a perfectly normal situation. Then the joke reaches its peak. Just as Ethel Merman is delivering the final notes of the song, medical staff suddenly rush in and inject her with a sedative right in the middle of the performance. The entire moment happens so quickly that audiences barely have time to process it. It's classic Zaz comedy. They took a Broadway legend, placed her in a setting that had absolutely nothing to do with Broadway, allowed her to perform with complete passion and sincerity, and then ended the scene with a twist of total absurdity. What makes the moment even more remarkable is that it unintentionally became Ethel Merman's farewell to the big screen. She passed away in 1984, and Airplane became her final film appearance, a Broadway legend, in a military ward, wearing a soldier's uniform, performing a show-stopping musical number, then being sedated in the middle of a note. In a movie built on absurdity, the scene somehow still manages to feel perfectly insane. Number 8. The composer who played it completely straight. There's a strange paradox at the heart of Airplane. The movie is packed with ridiculous dialogue, absurd situations, and characters who seem to be living inside a fever dream. Yet its musical score is so serious that it almost seems unaware it's part of a comedy. That's thanks to Elmer Bernstein. When the Zaz team hired Bernstein for the project, they didn't ask him to write playful melodies or tongue-in-cheek comedy music. Quite the opposite. They wanted him to score the film as if it were a real disaster movie. Everything had to be treated with absolute seriousness. And Bernstein delivered exactly that. He filled the film with soaring strings, ominous brass, and tense percussion that sounded as though the end of the world might be approaching. If you listen to the soundtrack without watching the movie, you might genuinely believe that the airplane was about to crash and that hundreds of lives were hanging in the balance. But then you look at the screen, there's an inflatable autopilot being blown up like a balloon, a passenger having an outrageously ridiculous meltdown, or a character delivering some of the most absurd dialogue ever written for a major motion picture. And that is where the magic of Airplane truly happens. The music tells you that this is a life or death situation. The visuals tell you that it's one giant joke. Those two completely opposite emotions collide, and the result is laughter. That's also one reason the movie continues to work more than 4 decades later. It doesn't just make you laugh because of what you see. It makes you laugh because of what you're feeling without even realizing it. And Elmer Bernstein never winked at the audience to reveal the trick. He played every note with complete sincerity. Perhaps that's why Airplane is more than just a comedy. It's a disaster movie, made with absolute honesty and conviction. The only difference is that everything happening inside it is so outrageously insane that it's impossible to believe. Number 7. June Cleaver and the most unexpected translation in movie history. Sometimes, a career that spans decades can be transformed by less than a minute of screen time. That was exactly what happened to Barbara Billingsley. For millions of Americans, she wasn't simply an actress. She was June Cleaver, television's ideal mother of the 1950s. Always kind, always polite, always perfectly composed, as though she had stepped straight out of a family magazine. But that beloved image also became an invisible cage. When Leave It to Beaver ended in 1963, Hollywood struggled to see Barbara Billingsley as anything other than June Cleaver. Audiences saw the perfect television mother every time she appeared on screen, and for nearly 2 decades, memorable roles became increasingly rare. Then Airplane came along, The Zaz team was preparing one of the strangest jokes in the entire film. They wanted two passengers speaking in street slang so thick and confusing that nobody else could understand them. Standing nearby would be someone who could translate for everyone else. But that translator couldn't be just anyone. The more respectable, proper, and unlikely the person seemed, the funnier the joke would become. And then, they found Barbara Billingsley. When she first read the script, she saw only a brief instruction: speak jive. Years later, she recalled that it was one of the strangest scripts she had ever read. That was exactly why she accepted the role. Before filming, actors Al White and Norman Alexander Gibbs spent time coaching her on every pronunciation, every rhythm, and every subtle inflection of the street slang dialogue. The result became one of Airplane, its most unforgettable moments. For a few seconds, audiences sat in stunned silence as America's most wholesome television mother stepped forward. Then theaters erupted with laughter as she calmly translated the slang-filled conversation in the same refined, courteous voice she might have used while reading a menu at an elegant restaurant.
Just hang loose, blood. She's gonna catch up on the rebound on the med side.
The most remarkable part was that Barbara never tried to be funny. She performed the scene with complete sincerity. And that sincerity turned a few brief seconds of screen time into comedy history. After years of being largely forgotten by Hollywood, Barbara Billingsley suddenly found herself back in the spotlight. Television shows invited her to appear. Fans sent letters from across the country, and new opportunities began arriving once again. Later, she openly admitted that Airplane had revived her career when it seemed to be fading away. As it turns out, breaking free from an image that had defined someone for nearly 20 years didn't require a major dramatic role or a blockbuster film. Sometimes all it takes is one chaotic flight and a few lines of street slang that nobody ever expected America's perfect TV mother to speak. Number 6. The joke that only works with the wrong voices. The airport public address gag in Airplane starts off very subtly. Two calm, neutral voices begin speaking over the loudspeaker, repeating the familiar airport announcement. The white zone is for immediate loading and unloading of passengers only.
The white zone is for immediate loading and unloading of passengers only.
At first, it sounds like any other airport announcement you've already tuned out before you even remembered your gate number. But then something strange happens. The two announcers begin to argue. Their polite, emotionless, and professional tone never changes. Yet the conversation slowly turns into a real personal dispute, broadcast in the exact same calm voice normally used for reporting lost luggage or gate changes. No shouting, no punchline delivery. Just two voices quietly unraveling emotionally over a public address system while everything else in the airport continues as normal. And just when you think it can't possibly go any further, it suddenly takes a completely different turn. A deeply personal family argument emerges, completely unrelated to any airport regulations. And here's where the casting genius comes in. The ZAZ team tried multiple professional voice actors, but none of them sounded authentic enough. So they made an unexpected choice. They hired the real-life married couple, who were actually responsible for recording the official airport announcements used at LAX at the time. The same couple voicing the airport system were also married in real life. The humor doesn't come from what they say. It comes from how they say it. That flat, neutral, mechanical delivery is reproduced so perfectly that it still sounds like a standard airport announcement. And it's that contrast between tone and content that creates the entire joke. It's the kind of gag that becomes even funnier every time you board a flight and hear a polite announcement coming from a gate speaker. From now on, you'll never hear the phrase, "The white zone is for immediate loading and unloading of passengers only," the same way again. But don't worry, it's perfectly safe. Number 5. Act like this is not a comedy. The most important rule on the set of Airplane was also the strangest. No one was allowed to act like they were in a comedy. From day one, directors Jim Abrahams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker gave the cast an instruction that many actors simply couldn't understand. They didn't want anyone trying to be funny. No winking at the audience. No acknowledging a joke. No hint that anything absurd was happening. Instead, everyone had to perform as if the world was on the brink of collapse. The more serious, the better. That unusual philosophy is what created the film's magic. Robert Stack initially struggled to find the exact tone the Zaz team wanted. His performance was too normal, too grounded.
You can't come straight in. You got enough fuel left for 2 hours of flying.
To fix this, the directors showed him a video of comedian John Biner impersonating Robert Stack. It sounds ridiculous, but the idea was simple. Stack had to act like an exaggerated version of someone impersonating himself, and he immediately understood. The result was a character so stern and intense that he felt like a heightened version of Robert Stack himself, yet completely convinced that everything he was saying was entirely normal. The other actors followed similar directions. Lloyd Bridges portrayed a man in complete psychological collapse, chain smoking, drinking, and even huffing glue, but his expression remained as serious as if he were starring in a war film. Peter Graves reportedly thought the script was one of the strangest he had ever read. At one point, he nearly refused the role because some of the dialogue felt too absurd to accept. The directors reassured him that everything would make sense later in the film. There was just one small problem. That explanation scene never existed, and they never told him. Even the role of Dr. Rumack, the character who would later become closely associated with Leslie Nielsen, was initially turned down by several major stars. No one realized that this part would become a turning point in comedy history. What makes Airplane so remarkable is that it never tries to be a comedy in the traditional sense. The actors don't tell jokes. They don't sell humor to the audience. They simply believe, with absolute sincerity, in the absurd situations unfolding in front of them. And that complete sincerity is exactly what makes everything so unbearably funny. That is the beautiful paradox of Airplane. The more seriously it plays itself, the harder the audience laughs. Number 4. A joke that walked straight out of real life. One of the most memorable moments in Airplane isn't a crash, a wild exchange of dialogue, or an iconic one-liner. It's when a 10-year-old boy looks directly at the co-pilot and starts criticizing his defensive skills. At first glance, it seems like just another absurd joke in a film full of them. But for sports fans at the time, the target of the joke was immediately clear: Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. By the late 1970s, Kareem was more than just an NBA star. He was a living legend at the peak of his career, a dominant center, multiple-time MVP, and the cornerstone of the Los Angeles Lakers. But greatness didn't shield him from criticism. Some commentators argued that Kareem played too casually during the regular season. They claimed he wasn't as aggressive on defense as he once was and only truly elevated his game during the playoffs.
I think you're the greatest, but my dad says you don't work hard enough on defense.
Airplane took those very criticisms and turned them into comedy. When young Joey innocently repeats what his father used to say about Kareem, audiences immediately recognize that this isn't random dialogue. These were real remarks the Lakers superstar had been hearing for years. The interesting part is that Kareem didn't avoid them. He confronted them directly, on screen. As his character instantly fires back with an offended defensive response, it becomes one of the rare moments where Kareem is essentially arguing with his critics in front of a movie audience. But the story behind the casting is even funnier. Originally, the filmmakers considered another sports legend for the role. If things had gone as planned, the man in the cockpit might have been baseball star Pete Rose instead of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then, scheduling changed everything. And then came the salary negotiation. When Kareem was offered $30,000, his team surprisingly asked for an extra $5,000. Not out of principle, not out of ego, but because he wanted to buy a very specific Persian rug. A rug priced at exactly $35,000. The directors laughed but agreed. A few weeks later, they opened a magazine and saw Kareem posing with that very rug. In the end, he got everything he wanted. The role, the rug, and most importantly, the chance to respond to his critics in front of millions of viewers. Not bad at all for someone who only appeared in one of the shortest flights in movie history. Number 3. When the Directors Guild didn't want 3 directors. Today, it's not unusual to see 2 or even 3 people share directing credit on a film. But in the late 1970s, that idea was almost unthinkable. And that was exactly the problem the Zaz team Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker faced while making Airplane. Because in Hollywood at the time, A film was supposed to have one captain, not two, definitely not three. Throughout the development of the project, David Zucker, Jerry Zucker, and Jim Abrahams did everything together. They co-wrote the script, they built the scenes together, they debated every joke and every shot as a single creative unit. No leader, no follower. They functioned like a three-part brain. But that created a problem with the Directors Guild of America. The rules at the time were built on a very simple assumption. A director is one person, one final creative authority, one name on the screen. Everything was designed around the number one. The Zaz team did not fit that model. To solve it, they even proposed a humorous workaround. If all three names couldn't be credited, they would use a single pseudonym, a fictional director representing the group. The guild still said no. For a short time, a backup plan emerged. Only Jerry Zucker would be credited as the official director, while the other two continued working behind the scenes, as they always had. But that was never what they truly wanted. Fortunately, before the film was completed, a rare exception was granted. The guild finally agreed to allow all three men to share directing credit. When Airplane was released, audiences saw a simple but historic line. Directed by Abrahams, Zucker, and Zucker. It wasn't just a credit. It was recognition of a completely different way of making films, one built on collaboration instead of individual authority. And although few people realized it at the time, that decision quietly opened a door in Hollywood. In the years that followed, audiences became more and more familiar with directing teams sharing creative control. Names like the Coen brothers, the Farrelly brothers, and the Wachowskis would go on to prove that a singular artistic vision doesn't always need to belong to just one person. It's fascinating to think that one of those quiet industry shifts began with three filmmakers known for making some of the silliest movies in Hollywood. They didn't just break the rules of comedy, they helped force the entire film industry to rethink what a director even is. Number 2. A 3-5-day sprint that created a comedy classic. The entire production of Airplane was completed in just 35 days. Principal photography began on the 20th of June, 1979, mostly at Culver City Studios. The Zaz team ran the set with extreme focus and precision, finishing the film on schedule and on a modest budget of just $3.5 million. But the real challenge wasn't the shoot. It was what came afterward. The first rough cut ran about 115 minutes, nearly half an hour longer than the version audiences would eventually see. It contained additional subplots, experimental jokes that simply didn't land. There was even a full scene featuring singer Jose Feliciano as a blind air traffic pilot. But test audiences responded with silence. And for a comedy built entirely on rapid-fire jokes, silence was unacceptable, not an option. So Zad did something almost unheard of in Hollywood today. They took the film on the road to colleges and theaters and handed editing control directly to the audience. Each screening became a live laboratory. They didn't watch the screen, they watched the audience. Big laughter? Keep it. Dead silence? Cut it. No committees, no market research reports, no executive notes. Just real people in real seats telling them in real time what worked and what didn't. The result was 27 minutes of footage removed. What remained was a tight 8-minute comedy, lean and relentless, where the next joke arrives before you've even finished laughing at the last one. That rhythm wasn't created in an editing room. It was shaped in college lecture halls and theaters across America, refined by audiences who had no idea they were actively editing a movie, 35 days to shoot it, a cross-country journey to shape it. And in the end, one of the most perfectly paced comedies ever made. Number 1. The 2-week ultimatum to prove they could direct comedy. Before becoming one of the most successful comedy films of all time, Airplane came very close to losing the very people who created it. Not because the script was bad, in fact, it was the opposite. When Paramount read the screenplay, many executives laughed out loud within the first few pages. They immediately recognized it as something fresh, bold, and completely different from anything else in the comedy market. But there was one problem that kept them up at night. Who would direct it? David Zucker, Jerry Zucker, and Jim Abrahams had already proven themselves as talented comedy writers. But writing a script and running a Hollywood film set are two entirely different things. At the time, None of the three had ever directed a feature film. No track record, no experience, no proof that they could manage hundreds of crew members and millions of dollars on a professional set. So Paramount set a harsh condition. They agreed to give Zaz a chance, but only temporarily. The contract included a special clause. If the early footage did not meet expectations, the studio had the right to fire all three of them after just 2 weeks. 14 days. That was all the time they had to prove they belonged in the director's chair. For most people, that ultimatum would have been overwhelming pressure. But Zaz's reaction was surprising. They simply said, "Okay," and got to work. Every day on set became a real-time test. They had to learn how to manage veteran actors, coordinate dozens of production departments, deal with complex union regulations, and at the same time, protect a style of comedy that almost no one had ever attempted before. Everything was a gamble. If the actors played it too comedically, the film would fail. If they played it too seriously, it could also fail. No one knew if the formula would work until Paramount finally saw the first footage. On screen were famous actors delivering completely absurd dialogue with the dead seriousness of a disaster film. The pacing was fast. The jokes came nonstop. And, most importantly, it was funny. Very funny. Soon, all discussions about replacing the directors disappeared. No more ultimatum. No more doubt. Three men who had never directed a feature film had passed the hardest test of their careers. They stepped onto the set with everything to prove and walked away with a film that not only became a massive hit, but also changed the history of Hollywood comedy. Sometimes, all a crazy idea needs is enough time to take off. And those are 12 bizarre facts about the hit film Airplane, a disaster movie parody featuring dramatic actors delivering completely absurd lines with absolute, deadpan seriousness. Thank you for watching until the very end of this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next exciting videos.